Oh, hello, yeah. Well, good grief. That was a windy one, wasn't it? Yes. Perfect day for getting arrested, especially if you're a bad person. There were lots of bad people yesterday doing bad things and making other people feel bad, and they shouldn't make people feel bad because they're bad people. All of them collectively are bad. If they do bad things, then they're bad. There we go. That's a nice black and white view of the world, because the world is like that, isn't it? It's full of black and white people. You know, we wouldn't group people together and call them uniformly bad unless, of course, it's politically convenient, in which case, well, we'll happily do that. And sure enough, the British media has, well, gone into overdrive this weekend around that particular one. I'm not entirely sure about the mindset that you have to create within yourself to actually make those things true, but I don't think the people writing for our papers, or maybe just, the editorial line on GB News and others, really care about such things. Because after all, in real politics, the real grown-up world, you don't bother about morality. You park it, and then you just decide what is politically expedient at the time. And, well, yesterday, there was a perfect example of that in the Daily Telegraph. One esteemed ex-editor and very good friend of Margaret Thatcher, Charles Moore, writing this. Link down below, you can read it for yourself. I'm not going to quote from it, but it's perhaps worthwhile reading it and having a think about what he's saying. But anyway, Labour indulges the Islamist grievance politics that forces Jews to live in fear. The Prime Minister refuses to confront the sectarian forces that are stirring up ancient hatreds. Yes, indeed. And he goes on to sort of suggest that, he doesn't mind Muslims. They're all fine. The Muslims he doesn't like, of course, are the bad ones. And he doesn't make it explicitly clear who the bad ones are, except that they definitely disagree with him. But he does manage to particularly point out Mr. Mothry, who's the deputy leader of the Greens, who's definitely a bad man, because as well as being a Muslim and an Islamist, because we need to make those two things very, very separate, says Charles, he's also a lefty, and as such is very bad. The problem I have with all of this stuff that Charles was writing was that it bears no real relationship to what you or I think, would regard as the real world. Because imagine if I was to say that I don't have any problems with Jewish people, but I can't stand the Zionists. Now, that might be seen by some people as a perfectly legitimate thing to say, because Zionism is a particular political ideology. However, if I was to put up loads of videos here a lot with things along that line, lots of people would say that I was being anti-Semitic, because often when you say things that are anti-Zionist, it comes across like, well, you're just being anti-Jewish. Which I'm not, because I'm an anti-racist, full stop. I don't like to lump people in together. I meet loads and loads and loads of Christians that are really, really lovely, and a lot of them that aren't. I meet loads and loads and loads of Jewish and Islamic people and all the rest of them that I just think are absolute a-holes. And often it's not necessarily anything to do whatsoever with their religion. It's to do with them as people individually. Yeah, that's it. You meet people and some of them are horrible, yeah? You might well think that gay men are lovely. Some of them are, but a lot of them aren't, let's face it, yeah? And often it does come down to it on that particular level. But Charles, being the mature man of the world that he is, can't live in that sort of world, so he has to paint his enemies as being particularly despicable types. And never in this piece that he's written does he ever hint about the fact that maybe certain people do feel a bit aggrieved at the state of Israel and its supporters. Yeah, because he does also sort of lump in Keir Starmer as being a very bad man, because apparently he just hasn't done enough for the state of Israel. I'm paraphrasing, but ultimately that's it. And here, what Charles is doing is, of course, the classic thing of lumping Jewish people as a collective group in together and pitting them against another group of people who aren't Jewish, at the same time as suggesting that anti-Semitism is very bad. I mean, it's not so much a cake and eat it as basically an entire chain of Prets around the country, and probably not paying out dividends. I hadn't really thought through that particular metaphor. But again, if we think about Sir Charles Moore, as he is indeed, he is a very, according to his own words, and you can find stuff with him having interviews with Christian organisations, a committed Roman Catholic. But I'm wondering exactly what form of morality he might think that he's espousing here. Is it bearing false witness, perchance, which is a cardinal, pardon the pun, sin in, well, Catholicism and Christianity generally, isn't it? Because he certainly is here. He's not espousing love of his fellow man or anything that I can see as being a particular Christian concern. And as a committed Roman Catholic, surely wouldn't he agree with the Pope, who doesn't follow the same line that Charles does here? I don't know, I get confused. But Charles, like the classic, Church of England being the Tory party at prayer, Charles doesn't ever let any notions of morality come into his religion. His religion is something that he wears, like a lot of Etonians and others like himself, wears as a kind of just badge, whereby he will presumably rock up to the church on Sunday and listen to a dedicated sermon about being good to your fellow man, and then think, yeah, apart from all the exceptions that I'm going to make in my head. Or, I don't know, maybe he's just reached that stage in his life where it's just such an automatic response that he doesn't bother with such spurious notions as, morality. But I think a lot of people that were out demonstrating Boo Here's Bad People yesterday, a lot of whom, let's face it, were Jewish, because it's always problematic, isn't it, that particular one? Oh, I don't know, are they good Jews or bad Jews? I don't know. Maybe they're just good or bad people, depending again on your viewpoint. Maybe they're not bad people anyway, and maybe the problem exists in your own head. Maybe. But these people that are doing these things, of course, have to be demonised because it's a wider political project. And Charles and the rest of them are simply engaging in a wider political project. After all, that's why Kemi was out on the streets of Manchester looking all, well, pious, is the only thing I can say about it. Anyway, I'm not entirely sure. I have severe doubts at people that will hide, to a certain extent, behind notions of their own piety. You do get a lot of them on the media. There's a handful of them that are still at GB News that will constantly say what good Christians they are, and I personally can't see it. I don't know what testament they're dealing with. I think it's mostly the old one. Big fans of Deuteronomy to a man and a woman. Still, never mind. God will judge, of course. I don't know how God will judge me because, of course, I'm not a believer. So I fall at that particular hurdle. But at least I don't hate groups of people based on expediency, which I think is effectively what Charles is doing here. And just as a final word on Charles, he was Boris Johnson's mentor when he was editor of the Telegraph. Often used to have meetings with him in Downing Street. I wonder what pious advice he gave Boris Johnson, because by my reckoning, Boris Johnson wasn't particularly listening to any of it. But I have a feeling that no pious advice would have been given at all. Do have a lovely day if you can do, and remember, don't be bad.